Hey, good morning. I'm Patricia Murphy. It's Thursday. This is Seattle Now. Tomorrow is Halloween, a fun, candy-filled time for some, but a spiritually important time for others. Seattle has a thriving local witch community, and while you may only think about them during your yearly Practical Magic rewatch, they're practicing magic year-round. We'll hear from a couple of Seattle witches in a minute, but first, let's get you caught up. A former sergeant from Joint Base Lewis McChord has been sentenced to 4 years in prison for trying to hand over national defense information to China. The Justice Department says Joseph Daniel Schmidt reached out to the Chinese consulate after he left the military in 2020. He shared security information with China in exchange for permission to emigrate to Hong Kong. Schmidt was arrested in 2023 and pleaded guilty to the charges over the summer. Seattle City Hall is hosting a resource fair today for federal workers impacted by the shutdown. There will be in-person help for getting unemployment benefits, job training, and access to food. It begins at 11 a.m. on the first floor lobby of City Hall. It's open to all federal workers and contractors, including people who live and work outside of Seattle. And Washington Senator Maria Cantwell is demanding answers about the NBA betting scandal that's been making headlines recently. The Democrat sent a letter this week to NBA Commissioner Adam Silver asking for information about how the NBA investigated and handled the allegations and what the league is doing to maintain the public's trust. One of the people arrested in the FBI probe was Portland Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups, who's since been put on leave. Cantwell is the ranking member of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, which has jurisdiction over professional sports. Check back for more headlines on tonight's episode of Seattle Now. Halloween is the time of year when the veil between this world and the spirit world is at its thinnest. The lit jack-o'-lantern on your porch is actually part of an ancient tradition, marking the transition to the dark half of the year. Seattle has a thriving pagan community active all year round, not just in Halloween. Just ask Silent, the president of Puget Sound Pagan Pride.
I think it's the culture of the people who settle here and come here. A lot more open thinkers, and we have beautiful nature here in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, that led to a lot of people from the witchcraft community moving here.
Silent has altars for important deities and does monthly lunar celebrations. He's also leading a Samhain Kispum ceremony today, which helps people honor their ancestors and connect them with those they've lost. He says witches and pagans sometimes keep their practices to themselves, partially as a result of their depictions in pop culture, but there's a chance you might know one.
There's probably pagans that you work with and you don't know. I've been a very out pagan for many years. Pagans and occultists will come to me and said, I'm afraid to come out and talk about my practices and beliefs.
Seattle witch, author, and educator Megan Angus was featured at Bumbershoot this summer. Between acts, for some, she revealed deeper truths with tarot readings. Now that we're in peak spooky season and are still reeling from a potential encounter with an Etsy witch on our baseball team, we wanted to know more. Megan, thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, really
This is
appreciate
very
it.
cool.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get our terms straight just to start off. You are a witch. What does that mean?
Well, yes, I am a witch, self-acclaimed. First off, I will say, and you're going to hear me say this probably a few times in this conversation, different witches will answer this question different ways.
Okay.
What it means for me is to be in lineage with great strength traditions throughout time. So I think of Amazonian warriors. I think of suffragettes, and I think of witches, all being sort of in the same category. Folks who step into situations and mess with it a little bit.
Okay, so that is the through line then. Okay, interesting. Are you also a pagan? How is that different?
I am a pagan, and it is different. Okay. We can think of witchcraft as sitting at a really interesting crossroads between cultural practices, spiritual traditions, and a philosophical viewpoint on life, where paganism is very much about a faith practice. And there are some pagans who practice witchcraft, and there are some witches who are pagans. And there's lots of places where those don't cross over, too.
Okay, that is the groundwork we're working with here. There are certain things that are often associated with paganism, femininity, nighttime, the wildness of nature. This is all in our research. I learned this. Are these ideals central to your practice?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I will work with those symbols quite a bit, but I would say that things that tend to be really central to my practice in particular are much closer to, they're non-gendered. They're sort of based in the elements. They're based in, liberation of all beings. And if goddesses are involved, cool. If the full moon aligns with work that needs to be done here in the world, cool. I believe that any witch that is worth the weight of their cauldron is deeply interwoven with their community. They know what's going on with their neighbors. They know what's going on with the people that live in their building. They're aware of what's happening in the world. And while they hopefully are, writing their congresspeople and voting and participating in all of that civil piece, maybe they also are saying a prayer to Diana, the goddess of the hunt, to guide their arrow towards their goal.
I'm listening to you talk about being so involved, aware, present, yet a historical understanding in popular culture of witches is that they're out there in the woods, they're ostracized from community. That sounds very different from what you're talking about.
It's a balance, truly, because if you talk to folks who do community work, if you talk to folks who are doing, social work or whatever it is, they also have to step away from that work and recharge. So absolutely, you will 100% find witches under a rotting log or tucked into a hut in the back of a forest or something, partly because, we do get sick of humans. I mean, to be frank, we do get a little tired of humanity every now and then. But it also is absolutely the place where we recharge, and then we're able to come back into community and really show out.
Do you do magic?
Yes.
How did you make the choice to do magic?
I've always done it. So it wasn't a choice. There wasn't a day where I read a book and was like, aha, spells, finally. The missing piece of the whole thing. It's something when I think back to me as like a really little kid, I was drawing pictures of the dreams I was having of events that maybe I'd overheard some adults talking about something, but theoretically, I shouldn't have known that stuff. From a very young age, I've had a little altar in my room and representations of the elements, a representation of some kind of a goddess or some kind of a god energy. Yeah.
What should people understand about magic?
I think one of the most important things that folks should understand about magic is that it's real. It is entirely based on your intentions. And it's happening all around you, whether you're aware of it or not. And whenever you'd like to, you can participate in it.
Explain.
Well, we think of magic sometimes from the sense of like, I'm a witch, I've got to go to my altar and cast a spell. But I also can go outside and witness the magic of an incredible sunrise. I can witness the magic of the leaves changing color, right? That's miraculous in a sense. And so, in my opinion, to interact with magic is to just, again, I keep saying these things over and over, but it's to simply be aware, to simply be present to the incredible things that are already happening all around you and just do what you can to come into alignment with that stuff.
That sounds like spirituality.
Yeah. And if there's a difference between spirituality and magic, it's that spirituality oftentimes threads into faith practices. Maybe we're worshiping deities, or maybe I'm praying, or what have you. Where magic is about working our will in the universe. And I don't necessarily have to worship anybody or have a relationship with a deity for my magic to work.
Is the answer always clear cut?
No.
So it's not always a one-to-one.
No, it's absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, like many things in the world, right? There's very, very few things in the modern era that are black and white. There's a lot of gray areas, a lot of weird stuff going on out there, a lot of ethical quandaries.
Yeah.
So it's not always cut and dried. It's not always obvious. And that can be one of the spicy areas of working with magic is who is to say that I know best? Who is to say that I'm the person that's supposed to be stepping in and trying to make something happen or not happen? there's an ongoing, really cool existential discussion within the magical world around that question.
Really?
It's great. Yeah. I don't know that it's necessarily something that we answer, but I absolutely think it's something we need to ponder, because if I am engaging in practices that, in theory, are changing things in the world, making things happen, stopping things from happening, am I the person that you want making those decisions or helping to make those decisions? Much in the same way of, like, who are we voting for? What are they doing once we get them into office?
It's spooky season, as I mentioned at the top there in the intro. Why is this the time of year that people associate with witches? You're being a very good sport about us calling in a witch around Halloween, I have to add.
Well, this is the one time a year where we don't have to wear our costumes, so it's kind of nice to get out and about. For a few reasons. For us here in the Northern Hemisphere, our biorhythmic cycle, the cycle that's happening to our planet right now, is that the sun is dying. Obviously, it's not literally dying, but metaphorically and, well, literally, the sun is in the sky for less and less hours a day. It's rising lower and lower on the horizon every single day. And we modern pagans, looking back in time, think that a lot of these practices were born out of people trying to understand what is happening to the big ball of fire in the sky that brings life and food. What's going on with that thing? And is there anything we can do to mitigate this situation? So that, to me, is kind of the deep root of, like, why do we get spooky at this time of year? We look out, animals are migrating away, insects are hibernating underground, all of our plants, or nearly all of our plants and vegetation, are dying. You're surrounded by an earth going dormant and a fiery sun in the sky that seems to be going away.
We're here in Seattle it's a place that has a really large witch community, apparently, as I have learned. Why do you think that is?
I think that there's a big community up here for a few different reasons. When I visited Seattle for the first time, I genuinely was really surprised, shocked, blown away by how palpably magical it felt to be here. And it's difficult to explain. It's a feeling, it's goosebumps, it's, you have these physical sensations, but there is a gut sensation of, it feels like the city is sentient. And I have a feeling that phenomenon happens for other folks and that it's really attractive to a lot of people. But another thing that we experience in the Pacific Northwest is we have a lot of educated folks up here, and educated folks tend to be a lot more tolerant and open-minded about things. And there is a general open-mindedness around folks experimenting with different faiths and different religions and living their truth.
For the end of the Mariners season, Mariners fans were worshiping the so-called Etsy witch. For listeners, if you haven't heard by now, a person on social media bought a spell from a witch on Etsy to the Mariners, and after that went on an extended winning streak. What can we learn from moments like that?
One, there are apparently still real humans on Etsy doing things, so that's lovely. And again, this kind of comes back to something we were saying at the beginning around intention and motivation. You get enough folks focused on a thing, and you can make some stuff happen, at least for a while.
That's very interesting. Yeah. That's a very interesting idea. I had no idea you could buy spells on the internet.
I think it's a little wild, but it's the modern era. What are you going to do?
Is that common now?
It's very common now. Okay. But I will say that throughout time, there have always been some witches or will workers or whatever the term was in that era or in that place who were willing to make the love spells or cast the curse or try to, get you the winning lottery ticket or what have you. Yeah.
Let's talk about the curse, because it is always my understanding, if I am going to make a spell with a curse involved, I should be very prepared for what's coming back to me.
Yes. Here's another place where you're going to get different opinions about this.
Sure.
My opinion is very much in line with you put it out into the world and it's going to come back to you in some form. Mm-hmm. Curses, and we can also group into this things like bindings and banishings. This is a spicy topic for witches. There are a lot of witches who say absolutely not. It's off limits. I don't talk about it. I don't do it. It's not my bag. No, thank you. There are other witches who specialize in that stuff. That is their bag. It's also about what responsibility are you willing to accept. The person who is perhaps putting a curse, hypothetically speaking, of course, on, say, a not too popular politician, is also taking a level of the responsibility for whatever the energy is around something like that, given that there's maybe a lot of people who really favor that particular politician, even if you don't. It gets into a gray area. And this is also, again, different witches will say this differently, but this is one of the places where a person might choose the term witch to describe themselves versus calling themselves just a pagan or an animist or a shaman or a light worker or whatever, is that some witches are willing to do the dirty work.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about witches in pop culture. Practical Magic was shot right here on Whidbey Island. They're making a sequel. What do you think about how witches are depicted in pop culture? Yeah.
It's always a wild ride. From one perspective, when witches are shown in pop culture, TV, movie, whatever it is, it reinforces that we're real. We are still here. We've always been here. We're not going away anytime soon. Thanks for doing our PR for us. But there are some pitfalls when you are dealing with a piece of media, show, movie, whatever, that is making stuff up. And sometimes that's the best way for them to tell their story, is to just invent a bunch of stuff, and it doesn't actually connect back to any real traditions or faiths. Witches being a marginalized community, pagans in general being part of, the fringe of what religious practice is in America, we hope that folks will be careful in the way that they depict us in media. It's always interesting when I show up at the monthly coven meeting. I don't, but hypothetically, if I did. And suddenly everybody is using a new spell form, or they're saying a new line in their ritual. And you're like, where did this come from? What is this? And it's from a movie, or it's from a TV show.
Wow.
And the purist in me, the uptight person in me is like, oh, that's not historic. Where did this come from? But coming back to, again, it's really about the intent and the motivation. If it works, baby. Use it.
What do you think Seattleites with no spiritual practice could learn from witches?
Well, what they can learn from me is about how you don't have to have faith to have an inner dialogue. And you don't have to have a spiritual practice. You don't even have to engage in magical practices to be in alignment with the seasons and in alignment with the cycles that are happening to the planet that you live on. In fact, I think that atheists and agnostics sometimes have a step up on us because they're already deeply entrenched in the faith of science.
All right. Do you also hand out candy on Halloween?
Yeah, we could call it candy.
All right. Megan Angus is a Seattle witch. Really appreciate you taking the time to come in and educate us a little bit.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. This has been super fun, and blessed be everyone.
Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. Today's episode was produced by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez and Vaughn Jones. Our production team also includes Andy Hurst, Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers, and Paige Browning. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Patricia Murphy. Happy Halloween.